time of my life, and I never felt this way before. And I swear this is true, and I owe it all to you.
Oh, I had the time of my life, and I never felt this way before. And I swear this is true, and I owe it all to you.
I had the time of my life, and I never felt this way before. And I
Especially want to welcome our guests this morning. We know you have a choice in how you spend your Sundays, and we thank you for choosing to spend part of your time with us. And Ace, we're especially glad that everyone is here this day as we celebrate Christmas, one of the most wonderful times
It's
of
the most wonderful time of the year.
CDs will be available after the service.
Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to thank all the Foxy ladies in Florida.
All the Foxy ladies who voted for you in Florida. Okay, great. Well, I guess anything can happen. Singing the final song on this year's American Idol. Joey.
The girls I've loved before, who traveled in and out my door.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you.
This song to all
And I owe it all to you.
Please welcome Dave and Sue Bowman, Dee Dee Barnes,
No, same place.
and Lynn and Ace Robbins.
Singing great.
That's great singing, Ace. Paul, watch his microphone in case he gets carried away. I want you guys to, you probably noticed something about that footage. We found footage on Dee Dee. We found footage on Ace and Lynn. Of course, we have hours of footage on Dave. And I don't know if by design or accident, we couldn't find any video footage other than some still pictures of Mrs. Bowman. Was that by accident or design?
That was by design.
Staying out of the spotlight
Yes.
for 25 years.
Exactly. But I was involved for, I think, 18 years. I worked in the office. I felt like I knew everything, and knew everything. When people would come to me and ask something, I always knew the answer and all that. Now you know not to come to me because I never know the answer.
Yeah, that allowed Dave for 18 years to be able to say this and actually be okay. You would say,
I was having an affair with my secretary.
and it was legit. You guys have been, from the very beginning, been investing in life change through service and faithfulness. And what does it mean to have gone from an old stinky ballroom to looking out to all these people who have been touched by the ministry of New Horizon Church? Ace, you got anything?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I can tell you, it's been a great ride. A 25-year ride. We started, as you said, Jamie, with the stinky building. We met an old hotel over on Interstate 85, and first day there, first few days, I guess, we had to go in before the service and clean out the beer bottles and the cigarette butts and the glasses, and try to get the room ready for a service. But we knew, Lynn and I just felt something really special about this church, about Dave and Sue and the vision that they had. And we could see this, believe it or not, we could see this 25 years ago. And when we started our first fundraising for our new building, it was God's Great Adventure. And the theme song was Saddle Up Your Horses, We've Got a Trail to Blaze. And we blazed the trails, and here we are 25 years later. Thank you, Dave.
I have to say, I had the privilege of doing Ace and Lynn's wedding, too. Yeah, so that was awesome.
And the story I shared, Lynn is the woman who made that initial investment to help spread the gospel. She's the one who helped purchase that tape duplicator. So,
To make such a small investment and to have such great return. Isn't that just like God? You give him a little, he makes it a lot. The fishes and the loaves. after I see this wonderful worship band and singers, I think back to the first time I came to New Horizon, and there was this one-man show up there. Dave, first of all, he welcomed us. He was a greeter. And then he stood up there, and he was singing and playing the keyboard and giving the message and de-greeting and doing it all.
It was the Dave Bowman show,
It was
wasn't
a Dave Bowman show, and it was quite good. It was
Unfortunately.
quite good. But that's a wonderful memory, as is even the cleaning the toilets with Sue and the old building near Northgate. But the memory that comes to mind most frequently for me is the times when we were gathered, a dozen, maybe less of us, would gather in the basement of Dave and Sue's home. And we would have prayer. Yeah. We would not just have prayer. We were intense about praying for New Horizon. We were intentional and intensive about praying for you, that you will be here. And that not only you for now, and what's exciting for me is to think that we've experienced the 25 years to this point, but now you become part of the prayer circle as we move towards the next 25 years. It's in those prayers, because it's a God thing, that the deep roots of New Horizon Church exist. And I hope you experience, as I know you will, the same excitement that we have had in being part of this awesome, life-changing adventure.
Many of you have kids in our New Horizon Kids Ministry, and you realize there are hundreds of kids there every week, dozens upon dozens of volunteers, all kinds of awesome environments. But 25 years ago, New Horizon Kids was this lady, Dee Dee Barnes. And one of my favorite stories is when we were talking one day, and she shared with me what kids ministry was in those early days. So would you just give them a glimpse back in time of what kids ministry was 25 years ago?
Well, 25 years ago, kids ministry started off with a hotel room as a classroom, and the ministry was kept in a cardboard box. There were two kids, small cardboard box in that.
Not a big box.
There were two kids, and we had two teachers, and we would trade off Sundays as far as teaching. And the activity for the kids was to jump on the bed. And when I look back at then, and I look at the kids now, and now, we're serving kids from nursery all the way up to spiked. It is just so awesome. I mean, the blessings that God has bestowed upon us. And we're teaching those kids about the love of Jesus and just about taking over the whole building. Yeah. So from a hotel room to the whole building is pretty cool. And I can't wait to see what God has in store for us.
Amen.
Well, we're going to hear from you for at least half an hour. You got anything else you want to say?
Later on. Just let me talk later.
Do you have anything else you want to add, Sue? Anything wonderful you want to say about your husband? Or anything you'd like to say that maybe it's not so wonderful?
I've got to say, some of you wonder whether I really have a wife or not.
She is not a paid actress.
She's all mine.
God bless her.
Bless her heart.
Are you going to say something? No, okay. We just wanted to do just a small token of our appreciation, just something that you guys can look back over the next few years and just see as a thank you from this church for your 25 years of service. And you guys can go ahead and open those up. Everybody likes opening gifts and watching people open gifts, right? Rip it. Sue's going to save the paper. She probably scrapbooks.
No, she doesn't.
I don't have time for that.
Okay.
So the gentleman, we had a little bit of an issue with the manufacturer, and Sandra Peters has already given them the beat down. But we've got a stand-in. What this one? which they may not like as much as these rings, but what will be these are stand-ins for some nice silver New Horizon 25 rings that the guys can have. And the ladies we have a nice sterling silver watch, and they've all got engraving, says the New Horizon Church 1986 to 2011. So we just say thank you again to these guys. I'm actually going to get you two to stay. Let's center up a little bit more. We've never had the opportunity to really say thank you to you guys or to do much special other than, what we may say. So we wanted to kind of publicly get together as a church and just do a little something special for you guys for the 25 years of dedication and service and sacrifice so that so many lives could be changed through Jesus Christ. So we want to do something for you guys together. So I'm going to ask Adam to bring out what we want to give you guys is a gift card that's going to, is a gift card. That's the wrong, that's the first one. Okay. Sue, you put up with so much. We want to give you a shopping spree in New York City. We're gonna give you we're gonna give you a trip up to New York and $1,000 to get pretty.
Oh my
goodness! And then because this woman, it is for her and a friend, so she could choose to take. She could choose to take you if she'd like. Somehow I don't see him going on the shopping spree with you. But I mean, Sue is such an unsung hero here at this church and supporting Dave like no one else can. Yeah. And so once you go and get those new, that is not what I meant. But that's true.
That's her ministry.
That's her ministry. Why are we so far apart? Sorry, camera guys. So, and after Sue picks up all of those awesome New York outfits and stuff, we're going to send you guys to anywhere in the world that you'd like to go on vacation.
Is this one yours? No, that was ours. Oh, wow. I don't know what to say.
I know, this is
well, that, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm wondering who heard me say, I've never been to New York. I'd love to go there. I can't remember. I probably told 10 people, but I didn't know why. I didn't know this would happen. I was not asking for that.
And we were just talking last night about a place that we would like to visit and had no idea. Yeah. Thank you.
We'll let you guys go get ready. So thank you guys, and thank you guys, Ace, Lynn, and Dee Dee, for all that you've done, and we're just excited to be a part of it, and we thank you. Why don't the rest of you guys, maybe you don't know the whole story, take a look back at how we got here.
It all began at a Mexican restaurant, much like this one. It was 1985. I was the youth pastor at Bethel Temple in Hampton, Virginia. I'd been there for about 2 years, and by all stretches of the imagination, things were going very well. We had a very fast-growing youth group. We'd grown from 35 students to over 200 students in the 2 years that I'd been there. We were kind of like the hot happening youth group and the hot happening church in town. We were gaining statewide recognition as well as national recognition in our denomination. Things were going extremely well. But at the beginning of 1985, I couldn't escape this gnawing, gut-level feeling that I had that something was missing, that there had to be something more. And I sat one night in a Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant after a student ministry gathering with a national student ministry leader, and I was just kind of pouring out my heart to him, just telling him how I felt at the time. He challenged me that night to study the New Testament church. So for the next several months, I just immersed myself in everything I could get my hands on. I read the book of Acts over and over and over again. I read the various letters that Paul wrote to the New Testament churches. I read articles and books about the New Testament church. I listened to other people's sermons about the New Testament church. And in the process, God began to crystallize a vision in my heart and mind. It was a vision for a church that would reach unchurched people and then teach them to live for Jesus. Later on that year, I began to sense that God was calling me to do something I said I would never do. I'd always said I would never pastor a church, and if I ever did, I would darn sure never start one from the ground up. Just so you know, never say never when God's involved, because He has a way of changing your heart. And He began to do that. He began to put in my heart the idea of planting a church that was based upon what I'd been studying. And at the time, I thought, that's a ways off. You know, we're going to have to put a team together. We're going to have to put a ministry action plan together, raise money. It's going to take probably about 5 years for us to do that. And that was my plan. But God had a different plan. I met with my senior pastor one day, and he looked across the desk at me and said, Dave, you need to go do this right now. That was October of 1985. January of 1986, Susan and I sold our house, packed everything up in a U-Haul, and moved to Durham, North Carolina, where we had no people, no building, no money. All we had was a vision from God and a desire to see God do something more. This is where the dream first became reality. In 1986, there was a hotel sitting here called the University Inn. And on the last Sunday of January, we pulled in my Toyota Camry and unpacked our entire church from the trunk. We set it up in the ballroom and had our very first service. In that first service, we had a grand total of 35 people. And we thought that was great. Little did we know the day would come when we'd have more people in our bathrooms on Sunday than we had in our very first service. A few months after we got started, we moved into an old church building that used to sit right here where TK Tripp's restaurant is behind me. That would be our church home for the next 5 years. And it was here that God once again began to stir our hearts for something more. The church had grown to about 200 people, but we realized we weren't reaching unchurched people. People weren't getting saved in our church, and we knew that's what we'd come here to do. So we started to look around at other churches that were reaching unchurched people to see what they were doing that we weren't. And one of the big things that we learned is that you've got to be willing to do whatever it takes to reach the unchurched. And that's a value that's still alive in our church today. After renting that old church building for 5 years, we finally moved out and moved into this elementary school gym, and this is where we had church for the next 7 years. Every Sunday, our volunteer teams would pull up out back behind this gym in a Ryder truck, pulling a trailer full of sound equipment and children's ministry equipment and welcome team equipment. They'd unload it all, we'd set up a stage and chairs, and we'd turn this place into a place where we had church. It was here that we really began to apply many of the values and principles that you see alive in our church still today. Here that God began to do even more than He'd ever done before. We began to see more people come. The church began to grow. People were getting saved, recommitting their lives to Christ. We added staff. We added a second service. God was just doing more and more and more. And finally, we came to the place where we realized we couldn't meet here any longer. We had outgrown Hillendale Elementary School, and it was time for us to step out in faith and trust God for more than we'd ever trusted Him for before. It was time to build our own church home. In 2000, we launched a capital campaign called Building the Dream. And that campaign was designed to help us buy land and build our first phase facility. We looked everywhere for land, and finally God led us here to this beautiful 50-acre campus that is now our church home. In 2003, we finalized the purchase of the land and began the construction process. And none of this made any sense, but we just stepped out in faith and trusted God, and once again, He did way more than we ever expected Him to. Easter of 2004 was our first service in this building. And I remember just a few nights before that coming into this room and sitting here all by myself. I was the only one in the building. And I sat here and looked around at all these chairs, and I thought to myself, this place is really big. What if nobody comes? But then on Easter morning, hundreds of cars came flooding into the parking lot. Hundreds of people came through the doors, and they filled up the blue chairs. And it was one of the most amazing days in my life, and one of the most amazing days in the life and history of this church. Everything since then has been kind of a blur. God has blessed us. We've tripled in size. We've seen hundreds of people come to Christ, hundreds of people return to Christ. We've seen hundreds of people baptized. We've seen marriages saved, families restored, addictions, hurts, habits, hang-ups dealt with. It's been amazing to watch God work in this place. And one of the coolest things in my mind, though, is how God has now taken our ministry beyond the four walls of this place into our own community. We've provided over 10,000 meals through our outreach to the Durham Rescue Mission. We've fed 4,800 hungry people through the M25 food drops. We've provided 2,000 brand new backpacks filled with school supplies for children at C.C. Spalding Elementary School, along with winter coats and shoes. We've participated in the building of 3 Habitat for Humanity houses, and we've given over $50,000 to our community ministry partners. To be honest with you, it's all been a little overwhelming. On that first Sunday 25 years ago, we knew that God had His hand on this thing and that God had very special plans for this church. But God has done so much more than we could ask, think, or imagine. So here we are. It's been 25 years. It's been an awesome journey. And you've heard me say this dozens of times, but I've got to say it one more time today. It's not about us. This is not our church. It's not for us. It's not about us. It's about a great and awesome God who in His great grace and mercy allows us to be a part of His plan to redeem the world back to Himself. New Horizon, the last 25 years have been awesome. But in the next 25 years, we're going to see even more as God works in and through us.